And now at noon, we have special live coverage of Inauguration Day for you. A ceremony is about to get underway at the Rhode Island State House. That's where Governor Gina Raimondo will be taking the oath of office for her second term as Rhode Island governor. State officers and the General Assembly also going to be sworn in today in Providence. Right now, we want to show you some live pictures. The steps of the State House. Certainly much different scene today weather-wise than Inauguration Day 4 years ago. If you remember, it was cold and blustery on that January day, even a little bit of snow falling. But today, look at that, temperatures in the upper 50s. We do have some windy conditions, and you can see the final preparations are underway there on the State House steps. We understand from staff members that the ceremony is going to begin in just a few minutes, although we can tell you that the official Inauguration Day events actually began a few hours ago, all starting with a mass at St. Raymond's Church and then a processional to the State House. I also got the chance to sit down with Governor Raimondo a few days ago at the State House for a pretty wide-ranging interview where she reflected on the challenges of her first 4 years, including talking about the failed UHIP program, where she called that her biggest mistake as governor, dealing with the ongoing opioid crisis as well. Now, today's address certainly going to be her chance to spell out the next 4 years. She's expected to talk about improving education at all levels and also discussing continuing to grow the Rhode Island economy. My colleague Mike Montecalvo and also WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi, they are live at the State House to discuss the ceremony today. We understand that they are pretty close to on time.
Happy New Year, Danielle. They're starting to process. They actually started from the train station, and you're going to see in just a couple of seconds they're going to be walking up the State House stairs. You know, Danielle talked about the weather's a little different. It is extremely windy here today, though.
I promise we tried to get our hair not so messy this morning after New Year's. It was so cold 4 years ago for Governor Raimondo's first inauguration. Our phones were shutting themselves off. Today, bright, beautiful, sunny, but it is very windy. So that could be a little tough for the folks organizing this, but right now, all the pomp and circumstance getting underway.
So, Ted, the scene is a little bit different. It's not just about the weather. 4 years ago, we saw people with signs protesting the governor because she did not have 50% of the vote. This time around, it's different, 52%. There's nobody protesting.
Yeah, no, I think it's a different feel. I mean, when you come in having won with only about 40% like she did 4 years ago, there's a feeling of, well, there's no big mandate here. The governor ran a tough campaign. She was far better funded than her rivals, and she won emphatically. She got a majority. So I think that is giving her a little confidence to set out what her plans are. She thinks the voters knew what she was suggesting to do, and I think she's going to lay that out today. I'm not expecting a lot of specific policy details. I think she's going to hold that for the State of the State and her budget address coming up in about 2 weeks. But today is sort of the bigger picture of where she sees Rhode Island today and where she wants to take the state.
So 4 years ago, she talked about unemployment being so high. Obviously, it's under 4% right now. She talked about roads and bridges. All you got to do is go around the state and you can see there's work being done. But there is a familiar theme, and that's, again, a $200 million deficit. You know, how do you actually cut into that without making more social service cuts?
Well, that's the eternal problem in Rhode Island. We have a budget that is heavily funding health care and other things that go up and up faster than tax revenue. And she's going to face that challenge in 2 weeks, finding a way to close that while still staying committed to the policies she promised on the campaign trail. I do think you're going to see from the governor not a lot of suggesting of any radical new direction. You know, when you get a second-term inaugural address, you're going to hear someone saying, I'm pretty pleased with how the first 4 years went. These are the things I think are really working well. I think she's going to talk about college, about education generally, about health care, as you said, about the economy, and job training is a big priority, she's already said, for her second term. So I think she's going to suggest that, and also the national economy and the concerns about the possibility of a recession means she's also going to need to be thinking about how do you make Rhode Island resilient against that kind of stuff happening nationally.
All right, you're looking at live pictures right now. This is the governor and the procession that's coming in, the processional march that is happening. Just some of the people, the other general officers are there. Some of the judges are here. You're going to see them coming up the steps shortly. Rhode Island State Police, local police, they're all here today
Senators,
as well.
Mayors, yeah.
And some local mayors, too. So, obviously, this is a big day. This is not just about the governor's day, too.
No,
I mean, if you're Dan McKee and you had an extremely difficult primary challenge, to be here today has got to be important.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, this is the inauguration for all 5 general officers, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the treasurer, and the secretary of state. Now, it's interesting because this year, all but one of them is the same. They were all reelected. Attorney General Peter Kilmartin was term limited out. So Peter Nerona, as Attorney General, will be the only new general officer being sworn into office today. And of course, a few hours from now, the General Assembly and the new lawmakers will be taking their oaths as well. So today it's literally New Year's Day, and it is a new year at the Rhode Island State House.
So 4 years ago, she had reappointed 2 people, Stephen O'Donnell, Colonel of the State Police, and A.T. Wall at the ACI. That is different right now. James Manny, who has now been selected to replace Anna Sumpico, who's retiring as Colonel. I got a chance to speak to him a little bit today. He didn't want to go on camera yet, obviously, because he has not gotten approved by the Senate. He is very excited about that job. So the Adjutant General is staying, Chris Callahan. So she is making a couple of moves.
Yeah, she's going to make some changes. You always expect to see some changes in the second term. We've seen the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Eric Bean, is stepping aside. That's an exhausting job, and she's looking for someone new to do that. So, you know, in a second term, the challenge for a governor who's reelected is how do you sustain some sense of momentum as inevitably the political winds shift and the focus starts to be on who will be your successor in 4 years. You know, it happens quickly that people start to look past the current term to who's going to be next. And in fact, some of the other people on stage today, I think, have one eye on running in 4 years.
Somebody told me today, no names being mentioned, look at that person. That person wants to run for governor. So they're already doing it on Inauguration Day. We still have 4 years to go. Let's talk about the makeup at the State House for a second, Ted. 4 years ago, it was arguably said that the Speaker of the House was the leader of the Democratic Party. The governor now, I think, has assumed that mantle. How will she get along with Nick Mattiello this time around?
Well, I think Speaker Mattiello, you know, he won re-election. That was a very tough race down in Cranston. And I think the Speaker, he still appears to have the votes necessary to stay on as Speaker today. And so I think there's no doubt he will still have enormous influence at the State House. But I do think the governor is going to feel a little more ability to sort of flex her own political muscle since she won convincingly, and because there is much more dissent in the House of Representatives, with more representatives saying they're going to vote against Nick Mattiello today than we saw 4 years ago. So I think that dynamic is always the crucial one at the State House between the governor, the House Speaker, and the Senate President, the big three.
And they also have some key issues that they're going to have to vote on: legalizing recreational marijuana, the abortion issue, and also online betting. And it's something that many of the lawmakers say they're all going to take a look at.
Yeah, that's right. Boy, this wind, Mike, is really something as we try. We're worried about things getting knocked off the risers here. Yeah, you know, I think we've got to see also, you always have issues bubble up that you don't expect. I'd remind people, 4 years ago, the POSOX had not come up yet.
Today, the national anthem will be performed.
Okay, we're just about set for the opening ceremonies here at the State House. Of course, we'll recap everything when the ceremonies are done, and we'll have more for you tonight on Eyewitness News at 5, 5:36, and 6:30. But right now, we're going to have the playing of the national anthem in just a second. The honor guard from the Rhode Island State Police is here, and Cranston Little League team is participating, so it's an honor for quite a few people. And the Pledge of Allegiance is from the Cranston Budlong Little League All-Star Girls, so congratulations to them. Enjoy the ceremonies.
So proudly we hail, highlights last week, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that
Thank you. At this time, the Cranston National Budalong Little League Junior All-Star Team will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please place the flag located to my left. It is customary for uniformed members of the military to remain at attention while civilians place their hands over their hearts and recite the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. I now call upon the Honorable Nellie M. Gorbea, Secretary of State, to call to order the convocation for inauguration of the Governor and General Officers of the State of Rhode Island.
Good afternoon. I am honored to welcome you to your State House for the 109th inauguration ceremonies of the State of Rhode Island and the Providence Plantations, a historic occasion that celebrates our state's remarkable history and traditions and offers us all the opportunity to look forward with hope and determination toward a future rich in opportunities for all Rhode Islanders. With the start of a new year and a new term, let us all reaffirm our commitment to working together to ensure the continued success and prosperity of this lively experiment. It is now my honor to officially call to order the convocation for the inauguration and engagement of the 75th Governor, the Honorable Gina M. Raimondo, and the General Officers of the State of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations.
Thank you, Secretary. I now call upon the Reverend Edward L. Peroni from St. Raymond's Catholic Church and Imam Farid Ansari of the Muslim American Dawah Center of Rhode Island to deliver the invocation.
I realize everyone here may not be a person of faith. Please don't let us make you uncomfortable. I'd ask that you concentrate on the ideals and the values that guide your lives. Eternal and almighty, all-loving, source of all that is good and true, foundation of our life and our love as a people. We, those of strong faith, or little faith, or perhaps no faith, join our thoughts and wishes. We ask for guidance and strength from you and from each other. We seek compassion and understanding. Grant us wisdom that we may find the courage to celebrate our diversity and not to dwell on our differences. Turn rancor to reconciliation. In our problems and difficulties, may we only find the potential for the greater good to which we are all called. May we build a better life for all as we inspire each other to be better people and more devoted citizens under your watchful care. May we be blessed and unified as we proceed in this solemn endeavor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful benefactor, the merciful Redeemer. Praise and thanks be to God. Prayers and peace be upon his prophets and messengers who brought us the glad tidings of the love and mercy of God to his home and abode of peace. We are his servants. We are taught in our holy book to submit to God, to serve him, and be of service to humanity. We ask to provide us with knowledge and wisdom. We pray to provide all the leaders gathered here today with humility and a renewed sense of duty. We must all work together as a state united. God has made us into different tribes and different nations so we can get to know one another and not to scorn or despise one another. We ask that his blessings be upon us in this place, in this time, in this hour of need, for his guidance as we work together for a better future. Amen.
At this time, Rhode Island State poet Tina Kane will share a poem she composed for this occasion.
It was my great honor to write this poem for Gina Raimondo and the people of Rhode Island on the occasion of Governor Raimondo's inauguration. Rhode Island Valentine. Salt wind stirs the appetite. Coastline expands the mind. As each inlet of expression, of sound and vision, as each shore's jagged scrawl marks thought, tracing its way. The way waves are in our future, no matter where we are always close to home. Indigenous as every appetite for freedom, indelible as natural light, natural right, our ingenious, imagined histories of liberty, manifest not in destiny, but in a forward flow towards love.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is both an honor and a privilege to announce the engagement of Gina M. Raimondo, continuing as the 75th governor of the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. Joining Governor Raimondo on the dais will be your husband, Annie Moffett, and children, Cece and Tommy. Holding the Bible today is her husband, Andy Moffett. I call upon the Honorable Nellie M. Gorbea, Secretary of State, to administer the oath.
Being by free vote of the electors of the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, elected onto the place of governor, do solemnly swear to be true and faithful unto this state and to support the Constitution of the state and of the United States, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties of your aforesaid office to the best of your abilities, according to law. So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations. Governor.
It is an honor to announce the engagement of Daniel J. McKee, continuing as the 69th Lieutenant Governor of the state of Rhode Island. Joining Lieutenant Governor McKee on the dais is his wife, Susan McKee, and children, Matthew and Cara. Holding the family Bible is his wife, Susan. I call upon the Honorable Nellie M. Gorbea, Secretary of State, to administer this oath of office.
So that he puts right hand on right hand. Over here.
Okay, get in here.
No, the kids.
That's good.
Yeah, that picture.
Okay, thanks, Nellie. Good job. Okay.
All right. You, being by the free vote of the electors of the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, elected unto the place of Lieutenant Governor, do solemnly swear to be true and faithful unto this state and to support the Constitution of this state and of the United States, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties of your aforesaid office to the best of your abilities, according to law, so help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Nellie.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Kara.
Good job.
Be careful going down the stairs.
Yeah.
It is now my honor to announce the engagement of Nellie M. Gorbea, continuing as the Secretary of State. Joining Secretary of State Gorbea on the dais are her husband, Stephen Dant, daughters Isabel Mercedes, Cecilia Margarita, and Monica Maria, and parents Roberto and Nellie Gorbea.
Wait for the kids.
Her daughter, Monica Maria, will be holding the family Bible today.
Right here. That's all right.
Fighting women.
There's no red. You got that right. Thanks. Stand close. Ready, Monica?
I call upon the Honorable Gina M. Raimondo, Governor, to administer
Ready?
the oath of office.
Please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. You being by the free vote of the electors of this state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, elected unto the place of Secretary of State, do solemnly swear to be true and faithful unto this state and to support the Constitution of this state and of the United States, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties of your aforesaid office to the best of your abilities, according to law, so help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
There you go. I'll seal it, George.
Congratulations. Okay. Thank you. Ponte la cara.
At this time, it is my honor to announce the engagement of Peter F. Nerona as the Attorney General for the state of Rhode Island. Joining Attorney General-elect Nerona on the dais are his wife, Dr. Shelley Johnson, and sons, Zachary and Joshua. Holding the Bible will be his wife, Dr. Johnson.
Please place your left hand on the Bible. You being by the free vote of the electors of this state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, elected unto the place of Attorney General, do solemnly swear to be true and faithful unto this state, and to support the Constitution of this state and of the United States, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties of your office to the best of your abilities, according to law, so help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
Good job. It's official. Good job, you guys.
Thanks, Governor.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to announce the engagement of Seth Magaziner, continuing as the General Treasurer of the state of Rhode Island. Joining General Treasurer Magaziner on the dais is his wife, Julia McDowell, who is holding the William Ellery Family Bible.
Ready? Whoa. Yeah. Okay. Please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. You being, by the free vote of the electors of the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, elected unto the place of General Treasurer, do solemnly swear to be true and faithful unto this state and to support the Constitution of this state and of the United States, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties of your office to the best of your abilities, according to law, so help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I now call upon the Honorable Mrs. Diane C. Medeiros, Chairwoman of the Board of Elections, to present the certificate of election to Governor Raimondo.
Thank you. Governor Raimondo, on behalf of the Rhode Island State Board of Elections, it is my distinct honor to present you with the certificate of election for your second term of office. We wish you a successful 4 years as you continue to lead the citizens of our state with the strength, fortitude, and expertise necessary for these challenging and dynamic times. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. Medeiros. High Sheriff David DeCesare will now read the proclamation of the election.
Now hear ye, the Honorable Gina M. Raimondo, having been duly elected to the place of governor by the free inhabitants of this state and these plantations, was duly sworn to faithful performance of her office at 12:20 p.m. on the first day of January in the year of our Lord 2019, and of independence 242nd year. God save Her Excellency the Governor and the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time it is my honor to introduce Major General Christopher P. Callahan, the Adjutant General of Rhode Island and the Commanding General of the Rhode Island National Guard. General Callahan will make the presentation of the Gorget to Governor Raimondo. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of the Gorget as we recognize our Captain General. The Gorget's history as military armor can be traced back to the High Middle Ages, when mail was used to protect the wearer's neck and face. Over 500 years ago, the Gorget had developed into a plate armor component worn around the neck to protect the throat. By the 18th century, the Gorget became ornamental, serving as a symbolic accessory on uniforms of leaders. In Rhode Island, the Gorget signifies the governor as Captain General and Commander-in-Chief of the Rhode Island National Guard and Militia. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the playing of Ruffles and Flourishes and Stars and Stripes Forever by the Governor's own 88th Army Band of the Rhode Island National Guard, followed by a 19-gun salute from units of the Rhode Island Militia and National Guard. The cannon salute will be initiated to Rhode Island National Guard militia units to my left. This is a planned custom, though it will be allowed. It is customary for military and law enforcement personnel in uniform to render a hand salute during ruffles and flourishes and the 19-gun salute.
Preset!